Hello, my name is Gerardo Lemos. I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, a vibrant city in western Mexico I know little about. Although it is part of my identity, I feel disconnected to it. I immigrated into this country when I was about 3 years old. My father had come north to work in the fields with my grandfather. My grandfather participated in the government run Bracero program that sought Mexican laborers in Mexico during World War II. Although the war was over, my grandfather would continue the migration to work and provide for his family. The cycle later continued with my father. My mother and I were able to use family members' documents to cross the border to be reunited as a family. We came to the small city of Waukesha, a small conservative community. At that time, we lived in a predominantly Latino part of the town. This community was close. We knew the families around us, and we supported each other when we could. Although the Latino community was tight-knit, I quickly realized that others were not so supportive. I recall many times getting dirty looks from people when I had to often translate for my mother or father. It made me uncomfortable and caused me to unconsciously deny who I was. Although I did not realize it, this denial would later come out as rage. I attended Waukesha Public Schools. I went to White Rock Elementary, Central Middle School, now Les Paul, and I graduated from Waukesha South High School. My journey through the educational system in Waukesha was far from perfect. In White Rock, I felt supported for the most part by teachers and classmates. Because it was a predominantly Latino school, we'd had similar life experiences and shared interests. When I went to Central, it was a shock. It was in middle school that I began to lose interest in school. Not learning, but school. I felt disconnected from most of the teachers, and I thought that some judged me based on my background. I also felt disconnected from the student population. We were looked at as the dirty Mexicans who were nothing but trouble. It was my relationship with my bilingual teachers that helped me pull through. In high school, things got worse. I never saw myself, my experience, my culture, my language celebrated in school, so I began to think that school wasn't for me. If it were not for the small group of dedicated bilingual teachers at South, I wouldn't have graduated. They connected with me, encouraged me to do after-school activities. They pushed me to think of college, think about careers, and they were even there for me when I failed them by getting into trouble, which was often. Another support I had that allowed me to graduate were my parents. Although my parents didn't make it past elementary school in Mexico, they knew education was important, but didn't know how to help me, besides by providing for the basic necessities, taught me the essential life skills, and loved me unconditionally. After I graduated, the last thing I wanted was to continue school. I didn't have a plan to go to college, so I worked a variety of miscellaneous jobs. At the time, I had a friend who was attending UW-Madison. He would invite me to his classes, and I enjoyed the dialogue during lectures. They discussed topics about social equity and social justice. This inspired me to want to return to school. Initially, I began at MATC. I was reading Aztec by Gary Jennings at the time, and my dream was to become a film director and create a film based on that book. This interest in film led me to attend UW-Milwaukee, where I took a class called Video in the Classroom. I worked with an amazing educator named Mr. Smith. His class was liberating. Students in his class knew they were loved by their teacher. I worked with his fourth grade class and taught students how to do musical and film editing. This experience initiated a spark to change majors from film to education. It was also during this time that I met my wife. I was a film student working as a bartender at night. My wife walked in, and my life has changed for the better ever since. She helped me snap out of my self-destructiveness. This was a time period where I felt lost, a life with no purpose, just going through the motions, waking up and doing it all over again. I felt like something was missing, and I looked for different venues, seeking to fill a void, but only finding myself with a bigger void at the end. My wife helped me overcome some of my personal challenges that were holding me back. She taught me to face my problems when my reactions were to run from them. She taught me that tough conversations are essential for progress. It was this relationship which also shaped my path to become an educator. My wife was teaching Spanish at the time and invited me to come into her classroom, and I attended a few school events with her. I reflected on my experience in school, running away as far as I could because I hated it. Now, I was yearning to return. I saw how school could be an enriching, liberating experience, and I wanted to provide that for others. I switched my major to education, and I have not looked back ever since. I feel my past experiences give me insights into the thoughts and feelings of those who feel disillusioned by our educational system. You must see yourself reflected in a curriculum, and you must feel like someone in your school cares for you to be successful. That is what got me through, and I hope to be that person for other struggling students. Before becoming an educator, I never thought of myself as a leader. Leadership was something others did. I was happy with my students, developing strong relationships with them and their families. I had my classroom with a great group of students, and I was happy to be left alone. I focused primarily on my sphere of influence, which was my classroom. I created a positive environment in my classroom, but I also saw a need for a more diverse leadership team. Many of my students and families feel voiceless in our community, and problems with discriminations persist. I feel the need to build my leadership skills to advocate for all students, including those who feel like they have no voice. My initial motivation to become a school leader came when a fellow dual language colleague asked me to attend an open house for an administration license at Carroll. My colleague and I had successfully built up the dual language program at Butler Middle School. We went from starting with 38 students to now having 100 students, and next year having even more. We developed the curriculum and effectively collaborated to provide authentic learning experiences. When I attended the Carroll Open House, I was inspired. I had always thought of administration as a group of people that chose that route to escape working with kids, and that it was not for me. After hearing the graduating class and the professor speak about students as their primary focus of becoming leaders, my view changed. I was inspired by the many stories of touching students' lives at a school level, and I wanted to change my sphere of influence from a classroom to that school level. My mission as a school leader is to provide a more equitable experience for all students so they see the importance and empowerment of an education. When I reflect on my experience as a child growing up, my language and culture was not valued. Waukesha now has programs like Dual Language that build upon the skills and strengths students already bring to school, and further provides rich curricular experiences for native Spanish speakers and non-native Spanish speakers. Programs like Dual Language work to build bridges between cultures, not walls of separation. Although we have made progress, there is still much work to do across many communities to promote equitable experiences for all students. My hope as a leader is to provide a voice for those who feel voiceless and engage all learners in their educational journey to fulfill their full potential. I was called to leadership by my teachers, who taught me the impact of caring for your students and developing strong relationships to further their academic skills and life goals. I was called to leadership by my friends, who taught me that intelligence is not only measured by an assessment, and also that loyalty is earned and valued. I was called to leadership by my students who inspire me every day, but also remind me of the constant challenges before us. I was called to leadership by my parents, who taught me the value of hard work and the resilience to stand up after a failure in life. They taught me that family comes first and love doesn't have to be said, but always shown. I was called to leadership by my wife, who taught me to believe in myself. She taught me that love is not only showing you care, but also having difficult conversations when needed. I was called to leadership by my children, who teach me that curiosity, creativity, and spirit are not something we can measure, but we should definitely always value, nurture, and cherish in every child. That is my call to leadership. Thank you.